Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tachon Transmissions. And this is the show where we talk about everything Star Trek and sci-fi. And we are getting started with our watch through and review of Strange New Worlds Season 3. And joining me on this adventure and every adventure of this podcast is my co-host, Jordan Morris. Welcome, Jordan.
Hey, bro, Cutis, how are you?
I am doing great, and honestly, we have a lot to talk about. And I'm very excited to talk about this new season of Strange New Worlds. It felt like an eternity, for it to get here. But now that it is here, I'm so glad that we're finally embarking on these adventures to these strange new worlds. That was an extremely cheesy statement, but I had to use it. So
no, we went through our dark ages, our dark times, our lost era, if you will, without any Star Trek, and it was like PTSD from when Enterprise ended till Discovery premiered. So I'm with you. I am glad to have Trek back. I'm excited, and it's good to have something Trek related to watch every week right now.
Absolutely. It's always the type of show that it's feel good even when it's darker, and it's great. So this first episode, so season 3, episode 1, is the part 2 to the finale of season 2, which was titled Hegemony, and this is Hegemony part 2. And we had a very large cliffhanger in the finale of season 2, and then we had, unfortunately, a very long wait as we were waiting. So Jordan, do you want to give us just a quick recap of where we left off with season 2 as we're heading into season 3, episode 1?
Sure. So basically we open up on the colony Parnassus Beta, which is not a Federation colony. It's a human colony outside of Federation jurisdiction. Sorry, can't talk.
A very important point to remember for episode 2.
Yes. And Captain Batel and the crew of the Cayuga, I was like, what is the name of her ship? Along with Nurse Chapel, who is getting ready to head back to start her fellowship with Dr. Roger Corby, which we will get to a little bit later. After generally just hanging Spock out to dry, which we will also get to later, are attacked by a Gorn destroyer. Of course, Pike and company aren't going to leave citizens and his girlfriend hanging out to dry during a Gorn attack, so they warp into the rescue, and the Gorn issue a statement, since this is outside of Federation space, and there is a line of demarcation that Enterprise has to maintain their side of, in essence, basically like the neutral zone, where's the Gorn are on the other side. Of course, they figure out a way to get down on the planet and such. Spock rescues Chapel. Pike rescues Batel, and we meet Scotty. But at the conclusion, they go to beam up the crew and the survivors, and the Gorn have already beamed them up and have started attacking the Enterprise, and dun, 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 to be continued. And here we are 2+ years later, or nearly 2 years later, thanks to the writer's strike and such.
Yes, and a painful 2 years it was, because at least, with the best of both worlds, those audiences only had to wait, about 5 months, or 6 months for that. So this was definitely a long wait. But, I guess first off, let's, before we get into some of the maybe the story elements, what are your broad thoughts, Jordan, on what you thought of this episode?
This episode was good. I would say I'd give it probably around a 7 out of 10. It wasn't an all-timer. Like, a lot of times with cliffhangers, part 1 builds up so much, and then you have time to think about it, like over a summer, or in this case, over 2 years, that you build it up and you hype it up to yourself. And sometimes the resolution's a little bit of a letdown. I don't think it was full on a letdown. I do feel they gave away too much in the trailers. Like, you see Captain Batel is going to be in multiple episodes of season 3, so obviously, like, she's probably you can only do so many flashbacks type things, so she's going to survive. That was never in question. There were some other things we'll get into. I wish they hadn't shown quite so much. I will say the resolution was, there was a bit more exposition, I think, which we'll get into, like the crew on the Gorn ship. A little bit more explanation to why the Gorn ship is the way it is, and how they were being held, what I thought have improved. Like, they're in these basically digestion sacks. Okay, why are the Gorn digesting them versus eating them? That's never explained. How did La'an manage to wake up? Does it have to do with her enhanced physiology, since she's a descendant of Khan? Like, that one throwaway line there that just sort of ties everything together, I felt was missing in this episode.
I completely agree with you. Because, I agree. Like, I felt the same way. Like, I was kind of underwhelmed, by it. Like you said, I didn't hate it. I don't think it was a bad episode. But, I was expecting more, and there probably was some expectations there with the 2-year wait. But I agree that there was a few elements of the plot that just could have been improved. Mainly exactly what you said, that I was wondering the same thing. Like, how did Leon wake up? And I think that, I feel like, being a descendant of Khan, we got that one line from last season where they talked about, I want to say, the inherited traits that they talked about.
Yes, there is a line in there that they haven't touched on, but it's like, there's something there.
Yeah, there's something there. And I feel like that this would have been a perfect opportunity to kind of return to that. We don't need to make her like a superhuman or a superhero or anything like that. But I think it could have been interesting to maybe touch on that, some of these abilities maybe that she's, that have passed down from Khan to her, have maybe allowed, her to, like you said, wake up, have more awareness than other people did. Because everybody else in the Gorn ship seemed to be having a lot harder time adjusting than she did, which I think was interesting. But I agree. I think there could have been a little bit more to that. I also kind of feel like one issue that I did have as well was that I feel like the writers of this episode really wanted to make a horror episode, that they really wanted this to be like Alien and like be horror. But I kind of feel like they were maybe told you can't do that, and they had to tone it down a little bit.
I can see that.
Yeah, because I feel like there was a lot of moments where I was like, oh, this could have, it could have gone a lot harder. Like them in the Gorn ship, like you said, with the digestion sacks and everything, like, them having, all of the Gorn, kind of, flooding in and turning it into like an action movie. I feel like maybe having it be kind of more the stalker in the darkness with the Gorn could have been really good for those scenes. But yeah, I feel like maybe they were told you can't do that exactly. But one thing that I did appreciate, I have to admit, and I'm sure this was a budget issue, but in my head, I like to think it was an ode to the older shows. I loved when they showed the Gorn flying in the fighter after them.
With the physical model, yes,
the physical model, like, it was very cheesy, but I kind of loved it at the same time.
Oh yeah, CGI tends to get overused, so having a physical model just adds some, even if it's goofy looking, just adds a bit of realism, I think.
I absolutely. So I got a big smile on my face when I saw that. I was like, it was classic Trek, kind of having those physical aliens that don't always look amazing, but like you said, really add to the immersion. One thing I was going to ask you, if you noticed this, when they showed Nurse Chapel and Spock in the hazmat suits, did you catch that those were very similar, just slightly updated from the original series hazmat suits?
I did. The costume department did a fantastic job, like staying like so close to the design. Like maybe an older model, well, in the canon, it would have been earlier. So a slightly older model, or, it was so reminiscent. Like, they really just killed it.
Absolutely. Like that was one thing that I could not fault for any of this first episode. Was I thought that the costume design was flawless. I mean, it was fantastic. And and I thought overall, like you said, CGI tends to be overused in modern, Trek shows. But overall, I thought they did a pretty good job with the graphics in this first episode.
Oh yeah, this episode looked great. The Gorn ships, the fight scenes with the ship-to-ship battles, seeing all the different ships, the Pablo Picasso, which is similar to it's the same ship class as the Courier that brought the Klingon ambassador in last season. But there's even if it's not this episode, it's the next one. There's a Crossfield class ship, the identical to Discovery in the background. It was nice to see more of Starfleet, even in just the title sequence, the intro. They did a nice job adding that, just a little bit of broader depth to things. I enjoyed that. I'm enjoying getting more of Ortega's. I'll start with the one thing I didn't like. Okay, her getting stabbed was a shock. I didn't like how we knew, again, if you'd seen the trailer, we knew she wasn't going to die because her brother shows up in the next episode. So, like, had they not shown that, and you're like, oh, raise the stakes. Is Batel going to make it? Is Ortega's going to make it? Like, it really would have. I feel like it would have easily elevated this up to a 9 for me.
I completely agree, because that was kind of an issue that I had as well. That when she got stabbed, I was not expecting that. I was kind of like, oh wow, and I feel like they also went out of their way, to make it clear that this was a bad wound. This wasn't a flesh wound.
Yes, agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
And I love that we're getting more to her character, because and we'll talk about it more in the next episode of how it seems to be developing her even more. Because I always felt like she was kind of one of the ones over the last, the first and second season who kind of always got the short end of the stick when it came to character development. She never got a solo episode, never really got a lot of sub stories either. I don't even know if she did get a sub story. And so, so kind of putting her a little bit more towards the forefront, I enjoyed, because she's a fun character.
Oh, for sure. No, I completely agree. I'm like, please don't kill her off before you give her some character development, because I like her and I want to see more of her. Mm-hmm. Other things I liked, the solution of carrying Captain Batel with Una's blood after Una basically was the prosecutor. I'm sorry, after Batel was Una's prosecutor last season for being an Illyrian with genetic modifications, and those modifications are what saved Batel's life.
That was wonderfully done. Like, I really, really liked that. That was a great kind of bookend to that kind of shared story, between them. And they might even touch on that later in some later episodes, possibly. But yeah, I really liked that. And I liked also the solution to Batel, I think, because it seemed like they were kind of going in that more standard of, oh, we're just going to do a risky surgery. And then it's like, oh, she's going to get better from the risky surgery, even though she only has a 14% chance of survival. And I liked that they kind of, turned that on its head and did something unexpected.
Oh, for sure. It was a nice creative solution. And then when Pike goes to see her after, she's not out of the woods yet, and then when he has that, like, where he shows that moment of faith, I was not expecting, but like, I felt like it really added a lot of depth to his character and showed, like, okay, not only there's more to this guy, but he really genuinely cares for this woman.
No, absolutely. That was a moment that really surprised me, that I did not see coming. Because I know I can't remember, I think it was Discovery, I think they touch a little bit on his like Catholic background a little bit.
I've forgotten that. You're right. There is a brief mention of it.
Yeah, it's very brief. I think it's when they go to like a planet where they were touching on the planet's religion or something. He brings up something about his upbringing as Catholic or something. But that was really it. And, obviously it was a completely different show. They hadn't done anything in this one. And so it was very fascinating kind of seeing him fall back on that. And I think kind of sometimes those quiet moments of faith, and even like religion too in Trek are all the more powerful because, especially in the Federation, that kind of faith and religion is kind of pushed to the side for like stoicism and rationalism. And so it was something that I definitely enjoyed. And I also liked too, in classic Trek fashion, it leaves it up to your imagination of, was it his prayer that finally pushed her over the edge, and brought her back? Or was it just clever timing? Like, I love that they kind of leave that up to you to decide.
Agreed. I don't like where Chapel. I knew it was going to have to end with Chapel and Spock, but like, don't say okay, we're good, and then kiss him on the cheek. Can you say mixed signals?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, this guy has issues already with emotions. I'm like, I'm fully human and I'm confused. So, like, I like what they've done with the Chapel character. I don't like. I guess they're setting it up to see why Spock won't have anything to do with her in the original series. I just don't like it.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, and we'll definitely have a lot to say on this, I think, when we talk about episode 2. But yeah, I agree. Like, I really like, Nurse Chapel, like in the series. Like, I really didn't expect for her to be like the standout character that I was going to really enjoy. But overall, like Jess Bush really brings her to life really well and has really fleshed her out as a great character. And so I don't like that they are making her unlikable, I guess you could say, in this episode, especially that you just kind of get, like you said, you get those mixed signals and you get that. And, obviously we know where it's headed, where it's going to end up, but still, not the biggest fan of it. But, what did you think about the solution to the Gorn that they did? Like, did you like the scientific decision? Were you hoping more for a military one? Do you think it was over the top? Was it understated? What do you think?
I don't know if I was hoping for a more military solution. It seemed, to be honest, it's a little derivative. It's basically the same thing as putting the Borg to sleep at Best of Both Worlds Part 2, in essence. Like, it's like, sleep, okay, so I did sort of chuckle at the line where Pike says, like, someone else will have to deal with them. I'm like, oh, we've seen this. Though I will say, maybe the prolonged hibernation, they continue to grow and develop, and that's why the Gorn that look different now will evolve and grow into the Gorn that Kirk fights in Arena in the original series. It was an interesting, like, the 2 stars, the setting was really cool.
Yeah, it was there was some gorgeous, like, gorgeous images, that came from that sequence.
It was I thought it was a little rushed, a little bit more like, okay, this basically puts the Gorn in heat, or like they're just like, they get a bunch of solar radiation and they just have to conquer everything. Okay, like, putting them to sleep, it's okay. Like, I guess their ships go back into a like auto mode and fly everybody home, once they're in like sleep mode. It wrapped up just a little too neatly for me, if that makes sense.
I agree. Like, I guess what I was kind of maybe, hoping for a little bit was, and, I normally don't say this, but like, I was kind of hoping for maybe a slightly lower stakes ending, I guess. That like, this kind of, they ramped it all up of like, oh, this is a full Gorn invasion into the Federation, where I kind of would have maybe they kept it as this was a Gorn incursion on a small colony planet, and we're rescuing our friends, you know, and that's kind of like what it is. Like, I think it would have maybe been a bit more impactful if they would have stuck a little bit more to that. But I also see that they felt that they'd kind of written themselves into a corner of why the Gorn aren't around, you know, until the original series. So they felt they kind of had to write something in there to address that. But I agree with you. I think it was a little too neat, and like a little derivative, you know, while still being enjoyable.
Yeah, like is all this Gorn stuff going to be classified, and that's why like no one's ever heard of the Gorn, even though Spock and Uhura were there. By the time you get to Arena in the original series, it's not that big of a deal. You can just say the temporal wars mess with the timeline, but to the casual fan, it's like, wait, what? So
yeah, I agree. Like you know, I kind of wish that, you know, yeah, like I'm not the biggest fan of the Gorn, you know, being such a big adversary, you know, in Strange New Worlds. I mean, as of right now, it's basically they've kind of been the series villain, you know.
Agreed.
You know, we're probably going towards something else, you know, in the last half of the series, but yeah, for this first half, they've been the big bads. And so, yeah, I kind of would have preferred maybe, you know, they just encounter them for 1 or 2 episodes, you know, and then that's kind of it. You know, but yeah, I agree. It could have been done better, but yeah, it was, I would rate this episode kind of very similar to you. You know, I think I'm probably around maybe like a 6.5 out of 10, maybe.
Okay.
You know, somewhere in there, because I did enjoy, you know, I did enjoy the, you know, the gore, the body horror of Batel, you know, with the surgery. I appreciated the details
Yeah,
they put on
the
there.
bubbling egg sacs on her back were pretty gnarly.
Oh, it was gnarly. Yeah. And I was
Erica's dissolved hand was gnarly.
oh my gosh, yes.
And then
Like,
that skull the guy that couldn't save. I'm like, oh, that's it flashes back to the Scanners almost.
yes, very much so. Yeah, like they were definitely very much dipping into, you know, they wanted to go, you know, full body horror for this episode, and they didn't quite all the way get there. But yeah, I did appreciate that and thought it was interesting. You know, so yeah, so overall, you know, I think it was a strong opener, you know, for season 3, you know, and it did tie up all the storylines from the previous episode. But where would you gauge and judge this, Jordan, for season openers for this series, for season 1 and season 2? Where would you place this?
Great question. I don't want to come across as negative, but Strange New Worlds has set the bar so high. Like, if you hit a home run every time, when you go up there and just get a single, it's going to seem really disappointing. I would say the initial pilot episode is stronger than this one. The season 2 premiere is the one where they steal the Enterprise to go help La'an. I think I would put the season 1 opener probably above both of those, and I would say I would put this season's opener probably the lowest, ever so slightly, just because the season 2 opener, it's like it makes me chuckle because Spock stole the Enterprise before Kirk ever thought of it.
Yeah.
That's what makes that episode, in my opinion. So I would probably, like, I don't want to be a downer. I would say right now I'd probably, like, they're all good, but I would say this is probably maybe my least favorite of the 3.
I would agree with you. I'm basically in the same boat. I think I would put the same as you. I think, you know, ironically, basically choosing the premieres, you know, season 1 for season 2 second, season 3 third. And, you know, I would agree with you as well, because, like, you know, I don't want to be negative either. But like you said, you know, this show has really hit it out of the park so often that, you know, when they just produce a good episode, you know, that falls behind just because they produce so many great ones.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So, what are your any final thoughts on what you thought of this episode?
Nothing too much. I'm curious to see who the antagonists are going to be now that the Gorn seem to be out of the picture. Are we, who's going to show up? There's a few. I mean, are we going to get more Klingons? It's a little early for the Romulans. But I don't know. I'm just interested to see where we're going.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I will echo you. I'm along for this journey and, definitely excited to see what comes next. And I'm always interested to see, where Trek goes with its big bads, because it's done a really good job before with the various seasons or series, choosing that. And so I'm very interested to see who's going to inherit that position with the Gorn. Out of the picture. Who knows? Is it going to be Cybok? Is it going to be someone else? We don't really know yet. But yeah, so well, thanks everyone for listening. This was our second episode of the podcast and our first episode for season 3. So if you enjoy what you are listening to, if you enjoy this podcast, you enjoy Star Trek podcast, we would humbly ask you to consider giving us a sub, and a like. And, maybe consider sharing this episode with your friends because we're, as I said, we're new, we're trying to grow. So, hope you enjoyed listening and make sure you tune in for our next episode where we are going to be discussing Strange New Worlds Season 3, Episode 2, A Wedding Bell Blues. So we will see you then.